Today's session of Visual JForex, I will be introducing you to an indicator named SMI, that is the Stochastic Momentum Indicator. This is an derivative of the stochastic oscillator, and stochastic is a well-known indicator. But compared to the stochastic oscillator, this is more complex, both in terms of the calculation as well as its functioning. But in a way, this is also more smoother, and many of the whipsaw trades can be avoided if we simply use the SMI. So here this is a part of the momentum indicator series, but we don't really have the description. So we straight away head to the Visual JForex board developed by the Dukascopy Bank SA. Here I have included its formula, and I think if you want to go into the details of how this SMI is calculated, you will have to do bit of search on the googling. Here this is its formula as it is, but we will not really go into the explanation part of the formula. Basically, the idea is to use the difference between the closing price and the median price, that is the average price of the difference between high and the low over a defined period of time, and then dividing that the difference by 2, so we get the median price of the high low difference, the average true range kind of difference there, and then we compare it to the closing price, and if the closing price is above the median point of the difference, then we have the SMI above 0, and if the closing price is below the median price, then we have the negative SMI output. So here this is the indicator stochastic momentum index, and here we will use ONTIC as our start point for today's session. Now coming to the SMI's input parameters, we have plenty of input parameters to define compared to what we have seen in most of the indicators so far. We have to define almost 7 input parameters, and that's simply because we have these additional parameters: the fast K period, slow K period, and the slow D period. And then, as is the case in most of the indicators, we also have to take the time period for calculating the SMI. And I hope you might be aware how the fast K period is calculated. It is simply the averaging of the difference between the closing price and the low price, and that difference is divided by the high price and the low price sum. So here also I would suggest that to get the formula for how this K period is calculated, you will need to do the search and then get that exact formula. And the slow K is simply the SMA of this fast K, and then if we take the double SMA, then we get the slow D, that is the SMA of the slow K. So it's fairly simple that way, but as is the case, this indicator involves a lot of calculation, and then at the end of the all calculations, we get the output values, the SMI and the signal lines. So here we will plot this on the chart to explain to you how this indicator can be utilized for figuring out the trading opportunities. For us, more than how it is calculated, the utility of is utility, how to use this on the Visual JForex board is more important. So we will see the uses of it, and as I said, when the price is above 0, the SMI output value is above 0, that means the closing price is above the median price. That means the momentum is on the buying side, and it is indicative of the fact that on an average time frame, whatever we choose for the time period of SMI, we have the price action which is in the bullish trajectory, as over the given period of time, the price is on the rise. And if we see the SMI is below zero, that means the momentum is on the bearish side. And here, this is the simple use of this SMI index, SMI indicator. One more way to look at it is to use it as the overbought or oversold indicator. So whenever we see turnaround happening after having extended run on the one side, we can also think about using this indicator to figure out the entry points after the underlying instrument has say reached the overbought or oversold scenarios. And whenever we see the turnaround happening after extended run, we can of course think about going in for the fresh position. And compared to the stochastic oscillator, this is smoother, as you can observe from this plotting on the 1 hourly chart for the Euro USD. So we have this indicator plotted here. Of course, there are false signal generations as well, as is the case with most of other indicators also. So we have to use other trend identifying indicator, and that way we will be in better position to think about whether to go for any particular trade or not. So here this indicator can be used both to guide us in figuring out the trend. If we simply use its output values by giving a simple classification whether the value is above 0 or below 0. And one other way is to look at this SMI and the signal line combination, and whenever the crossover happens, that way also we can use this indicator. And also the other possibility is that we can use this to figure out the extremely strong bullish and the bearish trends. If the value of the SMI is above 40, in such scenarios the trend is considered fairly strong, and if the value of the SMI is below 40, then the bearish trend is considered extremely strong. So we can use these situations to go in for the with the trades. Of course, a significant move might have already happened, but given the fact that the underlying momentum is pretty strong, we can even think about adding the new positioning even after a prior run. So that way also we can use this SMI indicator on the chart. Now coming to the implementation of this combination on the Visual JForex board, so that we can design the automated setup which can be run on the JForex platform to figure out and execute the trades on our behalf. So here, coming to the default instrument, we have to define the default instrument for which we are going to design this algorithm. If you want to work with the Euro USD, you don't really need to change anything. If you want to work with any other underlying instrument, then you will have to choose that instrument and make sure that it is supported on the platform. And as I would like to remind, most of the currency crosses are supported, but in case of the CFDs, we have to design the condition as is the case with CFDs input. CFD is underlying characteristic, and then we have to again choose the currency pair in its default instrument start value, export that file to the desktop, and then import the file on the JForex, and there you will need to change the underlying instrument again to whichever commodity CFD pair you want to work with. So that's how it works for the CFDs. So here for today's session, we keep the Euro USD as it is, and coming to the time period. Time period is going to be dependent on if you want to trade for shorter scalping kind of opportunities, or if you want to trade for swing type of opportunities. So time period provides you the idea of what is the probable move which can be expected in the given time frame. So if you are working with the lower time frame, the signal generation, the Trade generation will be on the lower time frame, and we will see frequent changes happening in the underlying instruments price action, which will be reflected in the SMI output values as well. So if you use the lower time frame, then the trade opportunities will also be of shorter stop loss and target levels. If you use the larger time frame, then the stop loss and target will be proportionately wider. So this is the parameter which gives you the trade depending on what is the time frame. So if you are working with the half an hourly, you can expect some 0.3 to 0.4% of the ATR moves, and that way you will be in position to close most of your trades in that day itself. If you use the larger time frame, then maybe the trades might remain open for a couple of days. So it depends on how you want to approach your trading system. Both way you can work. It is just a matter of personal preference if you want to trade on the larger time frame or the lower time frame, shorter time frames. Then coming to the look back period, here shift is the look back period, and if you take the value as 0, then the current output value will be taken into consideration. If you change it to say 2, 3, or whichever number you want to work with, then by that same number we will be going back in time and candlestick time period. So if for example if the time period is of 10 minutes, then if the shift is of 5, we will be going back 5 candlesticks of 10 minutes each, and we will be taking the output value for that particular candlestick. So here for example we change this period to say half an hour, and then we change the shape to 4, and the output value we will have is going to be 4 candlesticks back in time of half an hour each. So here coming to the current time is 11:30 GMT, and 4 candlesticks back it will be 9:30 GMT. So this is the output value which will be taken into consideration for further use if we use the combination of half an hourly and 4 for the look back period. Then coming to the fast K period, so here this average will be calculated for 2 candlesticks if we use the fast K period at 2. If we change this parameter, then the calculation will be equally different. So here I will explain to you by changing these parameters on the chart so that you will get a better grasp of how this SMI indicator works. And please observe the changes which will be visible in the SMI output value as we change this fast K period. Now if we choose fast K at 12, the change is clearly visible. If we again change it to say 22, here more smoothing is visible. If we change it to 3, more smoothing is again visible. So depending on how you define these parameters, you will observe the change in the output value, and the longer the time frame, we will have more smoother the SMI indicator. And if we change this also, say for example 50, then you have this SMI indicator which is generating only very few trading signals, as we are dealing with a very large time frame. So that's how this indicator works, and depending on the input parameters you will have the output. So you have to choose carefully what is the combination which is likely to provide you the best optimum conditions, the conditions using which you can figure out the trading opportunities which are likely to prove profitable. So here, if we change it again back to the default parameters, so here we have the default setup now in place, and all you need to do is observe on the chart what is the combination which is likely to provide you the best opportunities, best entry and exit points, and simply change these parameters accordingly, and you will have the setup which will work just the way you want it to work. And that's why these input parameters are very important and crucial, and depending on these input parameters we will have the output value, which then can be utilized to again lay down some conditions, or even you can use this for further calculation. So here, if we take any suppose logical block like if block, then we can put it in the first condition or second condition, and then we can define another condition and ask for that condition to be fulfilled, and only after the condition is fulfilled the trade flow will go ahead and the trade will happen. So this is the way this SMI indicator can be utilized. We can even put the output value for use in calculation expressions to do some calculation if you want any particular value to be generated before the trading is going to happen. So we can design and define all these various conditions, and the basic purpose is that trading should happen, the new trade should be opened only when the conditions which we have defined are fulfilled, and otherwise nothing should happen, and it should simply keep searching for the combination which we have defined. Now coming to the last part of the calculation on which the output value of SMI is also dependent. Here, depending on the bid or on the ask, there will be slight difference in the output value for the SMI, and also mostly for this indicator for SMI the closing value is used, but if you feel like you can carry out the changes in that parameter also, but as per its developer the closing price is used to define the SMI. But here if you want to change it, we don't really have the option to change the input value on the JForex chart, but on the Visual JForex platform we have this option. So you can do some trial and error combination and see if it works fine. You can do some testing also by choosing different applied price, and you can observe there will be some differences between the trade execution depending on what kind of applied price you are working with for the calculation of the SMI. So that's it from my side for today's session, and I hope you will be able to use this indicator to define and design the automated algorithm which will trade on your behalf just the way you want it to. So have a fabulous day ahead. Goodbye.